not promote it.
So a lot of people might be thinking, well, you know what? We already know the Z story. You know, why are you retelling it?
It's amazing. I've never seen a game with that many characters in my entire life.
We're gonna have 120 characters in total.
Let me set the scene for you. Your nephew stays at your house for the weekend, expresses his newly acquired interest for Dragon Ball Z. You, a bit of a DBZ veteran, suggest he plays Kakarot on the PS4. Your nephew is intrigued. In the process of selecting new game and playing for the best part of 10 minutes, your save, high-level characters, a ridiculous amount of Zenny, a save where the 4 trophies you would need for the Platinum would have helped you do so with ease, is gone. Confused as tens of hours of your time has literally just vanished. You're more than slightly bothered because you will have to replay the exact same story that has been placed in front of you for over 2 f***ing decades. Now, in fairness to the Dragon Ball Z games, when the moment was right, they were for sure the brighter side of the capitalized influx of movie-adapted games that were being developed during the PS2 life cycle, mainly because so much of the groundwork was already set from the anime. Recognizable characters, moves, possibilities, arenas, artistic style, story, and a stable worldwide fan base. Essentially, Dragon Ball Z was a game publisher's wet dream of intellectual property to be converted to a game. The blueprint of beat-em-ups existed way before a Dragon Ball Z game came to fruition. Stepping stones that would have been essential for it not to be a flop were already made. All they had to do was apply and innovate. And that they did. The 2D perspective fighting genre that became synonymous between siblings across the globe for settling your differences, as I've just punched you, oh god you're crying, stop crying, I'm sorry, please don't tell on me, only placed you in the line of wrath of mother. Single-handedly wiping the floor with your brother who towered over you, remembering fatalities was a way of boosting your ego, asserting your dominance. The playing field was fair as it was entirely down to skill, button mashing also, but if you paid attention it would have worked in your favour, until some spotty teenager who on their own decided to insert a credit, make you feel like you were experiencing a prepubescent existential crisis. It was a way of local connectivity, it was a way to scratch our competitive edges. And Dragon Ball Z hit my horizon and tapped into the market at an almost perfect time. Whilst their 2D perspective games existed on the PlayStation 1, riding the coattails of games like Mortal Kombat, the king of consoles was a complete and utter defining moment for the Dragon Ball Z franchise. Because not only did they present something new to people who had no idea of the show or manga, i.e. myself, they could get as close to possible to a fully playable world of Dragon Ball Z for the hardcore fans of the anime. But my issue is, the older I have got, and as life moves on, connecting that second controller seems like a legend of the past. And the more I have appreciated single-player games, time where it's just me, the game, no competitive nature, and I'm content, but I still want to escape into someone's creation. And the issue with the Dragon Ball Z games is that the story, for some reason, has had a lack of urgency for originality. As someone who enjoys the Dragon Ball Z games for what they present in terms of gameplay, with the story not particularly containing all that much of a nostalgic key to my heart, re-experiencing the same thing only dims the overall experience of whatever game I pick up that has the 2 words Dragon and Ball printed on the title, makes it almost instantly laughable.
It's amazing. I've never seen a game with that many characters in my entire life.
We're gonna have 120 characters in total.
Oh! Shit! Between the tiny additions of Budokai 1 to 3 and a gigantic yet revolutionary step between Budokai and Budokai Tenkaichi, the main selling point was the addition of characters. You thought our last game was great? Wait until you see how many characters are in this one. It's the same story, the gameplay is extremely similar, but ooh, characters. So what if I provided to you an insane theory that Dragon Ball Z has never been built for the sake of a single player story? It is merely a pawn that ignites that intimate competition between player versus player, a concept they have refused to let go because of the evolution and norm of online connectivity. That the same story we casuals, by the way, I have spent so much money on the Dragon Ball Z games for hardcore fans to be all up in my shit in the comments like, it doesn't have a Z next to his name. This is you. Hey there. That was me. But what we keep receiving is simply just a key to unlock characters. Hear me out. In every single Dragon Ball Z game, the way you unlock characters is successfully going through the story mode. Now, all of the Dragon Ball Z games have the opportunity to be played as single player, even if the game's overall design is to predominantly use online features to drive the narrative. Yet out of the 18 Dragon Ball Z games I own, there is only 2 that are exclusively single player. That's Kakarot and this hunk of arse. Dramatic? Lol. 12 out of the 18 retell the Z story, and one of the 6 that at least try doesn't have a story at all. 3 of them are built off of online connectivity. Fighter Z I will praise all day, the other is a sequel to a game that does follow the Z story. But if we put the recent games in order of release date, it shows this gradual letting go of the repeated story. Xenoverse 1 and 2 completely drop the Z, and it really is its own experience. Fighter Z is a rude boy of its own caliber, and instead of following that trend of originality, we then receive Kakarot. Now, in fairness, Kakarot is for sure the definitive Dragon Ball Z game. It isn't cut up into pieces, it is complete, but it is a terrifying sign for something like Budokai Tenkaichi 4 when the words...
A lot of people might be thinking, well, you know what, we already know the Z story, why are you retelling it? But as we re-watched a lot of the series, even we were kind of like, wow, there's a lot of scenes that we don't quite remember, or that's right, that happened in Dragon Ball Z.
Are being muttered out as an explanation of revisiting the Z storyline. It is ludicrous. Post the magic of the PS2, there has been a huge push for the use of online features, even basing narratives on the presumptions of players being connected to the online realm of multiplayer. So the next step for the innovation of the Dragon Ball Z games was building some form of originality off of the co-op experience. And as time is continuing, we can see that this is the trend. Yet still, unlocking characters for the sake of a split-screen scrap are determined by completing those moments in the story. Now why? What perks does that have? I mean, back in the day, pre the times of trophies, well, it was bragging rights. But now, absolutely none. Another thing Dragon Ball Z fans try to level up with a repetitive story within the games is that every installment of a new game, the graphics are better, the mechanics are different, and to them I say, well, yeah, no shit, it's a new game. Being excited for playing something new and being grateful for the fact that it is new is mental. I'm not coming at you as if you're the problem, just stop justifying being used. Let me use Mortal Kombat as an example. You know exactly what you're getting when you buy a Mortal Kombat game. The fighting styles, the characters, obviously there have been some new additions, over-the-top fatalities that you can't wait to see what someone's twisted mind has conjured up for a new installment. But for me, there isn't this overshadowing, oh for fuck's sake, not again feeling. In fact, Mortal Kombat has evolved significantly less than Dragon Ball Z because of the foundation it has laid down for its premise, and it hasn't even had half of the opportunities to do so. But still, there wouldn't be a moment where I even consider not throwing my money at it. I'm not saying that the narrative is the be-all and end-all for me to enjoy a game. Mortal Kombat has had the exact same premise. A once-in-a-generation tournament designed by gods who want to see who can hang with the boss. But at least, they are willing to present something new. I understand from the position and pressures of being rented a license. The maths is simple. You hold it for X amount of time, your capitalization is pumping out whatever is valid in order to turn money over. You keep the owner impressed by the check they receive, you have stability as a developer. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but in England, finding Dragon Ball Z games on the shelf within a game store isn't the easiest thing to do. When they are there, they are extremely expensive and those prices do not drop often. By no means am I saying that the games don't sell well, as Kakarot has sold over 6 million units and Fighter Z has crossed over 10 million worldwide. But they are very niche games. So essentially, from a marketing standpoint, if you have sold millions of units to a relatively slowish growing market but constantly capture your returning audience that you know are going to buy your product because of its rarity and their love for the series, realistically, why would you bother? Why bother taking a risk when the people who will get hurt are your pre-existing fanbase? The people who unapologetically keep returning? It's simple. They're pussies. Success can be defined by all sorts of margins, but if I was the one who was moving the pen for the Dragon Ball Z license in the market of games, I would want to push that grounded, unique, instantly recognizable edge that Dragon Ball Z has over its competitors to a wider audience. Tap into areas that have yet to be explored, because there is every opportunity to do so. There is a reason why Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z has done so well, and it's not because of luck. In fact, it's one of the most limiting Dragon Ball Z games in terms of those redefining mechanics, returning to its roots, yet is significantly better than the majority of the drip that has been released. And I also can't find any justification to holding on to the old. There is a huge benefit of new that completely ripples down to the foundation of the IP. In fact, focusing and retelling the same story only hurts business in the grand scheme of things. Why would I buy or watch the anime, which should be the root of the entire thing, when I can experience the story with the greatest tool that will forever make games the alpha medium that is agency? Have you ever caught onto something relatively late? A show, a game, a band, whatever it is. Something later in the timeline after its infancy. Well, I'm sure you have. What did you do after becoming a fan? You went backwards whilst you waited for the next step. And the hypocrisy of it all, I will be buying Budokai Tenkaichi 4. I do enjoy the games. I don't give a rat's ass about the anime series, the stupid bald cat, which is exactly why for me they would be considerably better if they brought a sliver of originality, a reason for those who couldn't give a monkeys about the anime had something new to identify their time to, an adventure that can take these well-established characters, place them into scenarios where a new wave of a fan base can tag along. We have seen how fundamental a new interpretation is for well-established IPs, but with retelling the story, there is zero need. Or maybe I just need to accept my theory on the player versus player purpose and find some new friends. Nah, fuck that. Bye.